Hey, McFly!
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
I just watched Back to the Future 3 last night. So
Yeah. You know what's really funny? Not that it's funny, but I'm watching this and I'm thinking to myself, this is probably the 300th time I've seen this movie. And this is the very first time Jim is watching this. And I couldn't get that out of my head that you were actually watching this, a 32-year-old movie for the very first time.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, I'm very excited to talk this.
Yeah.
So.
And it's good that even though we're breaking it up just for a week, that we're taking it by itself. Because in a lot of people's minds, and in mine especially, it's lumped in with part 2 because everybody knows it was filmed at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think it really does deserve to be looked at on its own merits.
Absolutely. But I think it is, watching them back to back. The first time I saw this was in the theater with all 3 movies, and to see them all, because there are a lot of themes that they carry through again and again. There's a running gag joke with Marty waking up in bed and it's his mom, but it's always a different person version of herself. And they kind of play a little fast and loose with that one in this. But it's fun. So I guess we'll get there and find out what you thought.
Yeah. And I guess we're in already.
I guess we are in.
Welcome, everybody.
Yes, welcome. Here we are. If you listened last week, Back to the Future 2, and we're going right into Back to the Future 3.
Yes, we are.
You do realize that during this week is actually when Marty and Doc got their picture taken with the clock. September 9th, I think it was, 1885. So it was a historical moment, and that's why we're doing this.
It's too bad that I didn't watch it one night earlier then.
You could have celebrated. You could have celebrated. You could have left your firearms at the door and participated in the hootenanny. Yes. We don't really have.
I wonder if they charged for those pictures.
That's a good question. Well, speaking of charging, both these gentlemen are showing up at New York Comic Con, and people are losing their freaking minds because they are charging a fortune, and rightfully so. I looked up mine. I think I paid $60 for Christopher Lloyd, and then it was an additional X amount of dollars to have him actually inscribe it with the name Doc. Hey, listen, he's 80 something.
So extra money for 3 more letters.
Correct. Yeah. There's like a whole pricing tier, because I remember when Huey Lewis, like, you could get up to 6 words added. So if you wanted, the power of love, or you're too darn loud boys, whatever you wanted, it was exact amount of dollars more.
Okay.
I did pay extra for Tom Wilson to sign up. What are you looking at, butthead? Because how can you not? But yes, they are showing up to New York Comic Con. They are doing a exclusive panel, which you have to pay extra for. And I guess the premiere package, which is the panel, a meet and greet, and then an item of your choice signed by each of them is going to run you about $1,000.
So this is Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd.
Correct.
With a private panel for those who pay.
Yes. Yeah. I would think that probably more people are going to show. I mean, who knows? They have been touring together. A lot of these other, Tom Wilson and Leah Thompson and Crispin Glover.
So the question is, you're going to New York Comic Con.
I am going to New York Comic Con, but I am not spending that kind of money or time.
What's the cost for just the panel? Do you know?
That's a good. I think it's like $140. Don't quote me on that, but it is an additional fee. And they've gotten such backlash that I guess they've opened it up to a like a lottery, but you're still going to have to pay. most people, because you're paying almost $100 just to walk in the door. My ticket is like 60 some bucks, but by the time you add on all the fees, it's like $89 just to walk through the doors.
I hope they at least hand you a bottle of water and a bag of chips when you walk through those doors.
$45. You'll get one for $45. Water's at a premium, my friend.
Speaking of conventions, this is probably, I would imagine, in your news, but D23 is happening as we're recording this.
There's a ton of stuff that's dropping on D23. The teaser trailer has been released for Indiana Jones 5. If you're there, I mean, there's people already describing what they're seeing, and I guess that they have some props and some conceptual paintings. Marvel's all over the place. They dropped a lineup for Thunderbolts. I don't really think it's much of a surprise.
Which I'm shocked that it's not actually live action puppets.
Oh, that would be
like Thunderbolts.
That's a deep Thunderbirds cut. That would be I would enjoy that immensely. Yeah. So the one I think glaring miss is Baron Zemo, who in the comics was the mastermind behind it all.
Well, maybe they're holding back a little.
I would like to think so. I would like to think that is the case. But I see that they announced Matt Shakman as the official director for Fantastic Four, but that's all we got.
Now, before we get too deep into D23, did you notice that they dropped on Disney Plus an overview of day one? And I can only assume today, as we're recording, they will drop an overview.
No, I haven't. I did not see that.
Yeah, I watched it last night.
So is that like with panels, and are they actually showing me the stuff?
Precious little. Yeah. It's only maybe 25 minutes.
Okay.
And it's just like two very enthusiastic hosts going over just a very limited highlights, the bare minimum of highlights. You see like 2 seconds of Jamie Lee Curtis in the Dune buggy. Oh, Haunted Mansion movie is coming. They don't mention who else is in it besides her.
Jamie Lee Curtis is in a Dune buggy?
In a Doom.
A Doom buggy? Is it not? Oh, I thought maybe it was like a speed racer or something.
No, those are the ride vehicles. That's what they call the ride vehicles in the Haunted Mansion ride. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how she came out on stage, and it was like a reveal where the back of this vehicle was to the audience, and suddenly it turns, and there she is.
I would think that she's pretty iconic silhouette. You would know it was her.
Well, you can't. The Doom buggy is completely covered, so you can't even see the person.
Oh, gotcha.
And then they just went through a list of what was announced, and so very little was actually shown of what happened at day one. Okay. But with the one that I'm most excited about is Inside Out 2.
I know. I'm surprised that this has been announced.
And a theatrical release.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah.
Pixar needs to get some love, and Disney has dropped the ball big time on Pixar. But yeah, we also got Mandalorian season 3 teaser, Secret Invasion. Nick Fury's coming back, and the one that I'm getting the biggest buzz for is this Werewolf by Night.
I heard about that myself.
Yes, Indiana Jones 5 was teased. There's people online that are showing the description of the trailers, and there's some costumes and conceptual art out there. I'm staying away. Other than the fact that one thing that's making around is a Harrison Ford and Short Round back together again after X amount of years.
Well, I saw the photo, but does that mean he is in the movie?
No, I would like to think so, but that looks like they haven't seen each other in a while. So I don't know.
That's a nice picture, though. If that's what you're talking about. I saw it on my social media feeds of Harrison Ford hugging Ke Huy Quan.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to butcher it. There's really no other big news going on right now. Everyone's steering clear. Okay. So Back to the Future 3.
Yes.
And we are pairing this up with a true classic.
For some, that's not a sarcastic statement whatsoever. Timecop.
A little Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, we got to sneak these in when we can, right?
JCVD. A lot of people, when you read articles about him these days, a lot of people just use the initials rather than type his whole name out.
Yeah. I don't need to say Jean-Claude Van Damme every time.
That was the brand of a videotapes, right? Wasn't it JVC?
JVC, yeah. That's the VHS recorder that Marty McFly runs around with.
Yeah. Jean-Claude Van Damme videotapes and
there you go.
Old VCRs.
That came out 4 years after this movie, 1994.
1994.
Yeah, crazy. All right, we'll get there. So here we go. So as I mentioned, this is the first time you've ever seen this.
This is. And the reason
my
being,
mind.
Because I saw the original Back to the Future in the theater, loved it back when it was released in 1985. Loved it so much that I remember when I was a senior in high school. I suppose this is still true to this day, but one of the perks of being a senior is that we had a free period where, you go to the library, you go to the cafeteria, you go run laps if you're a jock or whatever. I hosted a movie club in our library AV room. So I'd bring in a videotape because I used to have like the 2 VCR set up back in the day where I'd illegally copy all the movies that I rented. And Back to the Future was one of them. And I have to tell you, that was one of the biggest turnouts I got in the movie club when I showed Back to the Future. It was over like 2 weeks because the period wasn't long enough to show the whole movie. Yeah, we had a
So just like now,
library.
you had to break it up into 2 viewings.
Yes. Yep.
I can't.
So I have a lot of great memories of that first Back to the Future movie. Okay. And then I went to go see the second one and I was underwhelmed. As we discussed last week, go listen to our discussion last week on the second Back to the Future. So because of that, and because it just seemed to me to be build up to this third movie, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And I never went to go see the third movie, and I'd never watched it over the years. And this is the first
You've
time.
Never come across it and be like, oh, I should probably watch it.
No, I never have.
Wow. That's crazy. So here we are, 32 years later.
Yes.
Let's see if your expectations or if you were right that you should have stayed away.
So a little foundation. As we were discussing last week and at the top of this show, it was filmed concurrently with Back to the Future 2. Actually, I think they sort of filmed them in order because what I was reading, there was like a 2 or 3 week hiatus between the two.
Yeah, and they
had to change locations. Obviously, it's a Western. And Zemeckis, on some of the features that I watched on 3, was regretful because he felt he had to rush. Yeah, that he had to rush the editing because he wasn't able to oversee it as much as he wanted to, because he was, all these night flights jetting back and forth between the set and between the editing bay to get 2 ready in time. But 3 was released in May 1990, May 25th. So it was a Memorial Day weekend, the big opener of the summer. Didn't do quite as much as 2 because 2 had all, the years of drought for Back to the Future fans behind it. But 3 on a $40 million budget. And I can't see how did they really, they probably just cut the budget for the 2 movies in half. I don't see
that's exactly, I think that's exactly what, when they originally pitched it, it was supposed to be 1 movie. And Scheinberg was like, well, what if we just split everything right in half and we make it 2 movies?
So that's how they can figure out how much each movie got budget wise. So on a $40 million budget, it made $245 million. So a hit by anyone's standards at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been thinking about this. We talked ad nauseum last week about the whole Crispin Glover shenanigans that went on. And one of the things I was thinking of, which is Bob Gale and Zemeckis both said that Crispin Glover's agent came to them, and for him to do the 2 and 3, that he wanted the same amount of money as Michael J. Fox. And they were like, laughed them out of the room. But according to Crispin Glover, he just didn't like the ending of the first movie because he didn't like the idea of money equals happiness. But if he had got that money that he had requested, he would have done the movie, thus making him happy. So there is a conundrum going on there, Mr. Glover.
This is like the time-space continuum.
Right, because if
unraveling,
if they're like, yeah, we can't do this without you. However much money you want, he would have been. That's great. I'm in, and then he would have been happy. He would have made these movies, and he would have been happy. So I'm starting to really question his whole narrative.
Has he ever admitted that it was financially driven, that he wanted as much money as Michael J. Fox? I can't see him doing that.
I have not. It's not like I sat down and watched every Crispin Glover interview, but when the handful that I watch, I have seen over the years and then reviewed for the podcast. And most of these are now more current interviews. He does stick to the narrative that he just didn't like the idea, this idea that the McFly family were better because he was successful.
To his point, and as you mentioned last week, that he actually brought this up during filming of the first one, So, this is before, money woes about part 2 even came into anybody's mind. So there could be some truth on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, because in this movie, Seamus McFly was supposed to be played by Crispin Glover.
That would make sense. That would make sense.
Yeah, because it does get a little creepy that he's now married to his mom, basically, because Leah Thompson, who has nothing to do in this movie, by the way. They just felt bad that you can't do a Back to the Future movie without her, but she didn't really have much to contribute.
So I wonder how much more he would be in part 2 if he had agreed to be in both movies. If he would
that probably would have completely changed.
If he would be Marty's son.
Upside down. Oh, interesting. Oh, we're going down the rabbit hole now.
Yeah.
We'll never know. You know what? We'll never know. I'm not even going to waste any more time on it. So yeah, we basically start this movie exactly where the last one ends, which is also the exact same ending as the first movie. We're still stuck in 1955. Doc has just sent Marty back to the future, only to have Marty come running around the corner. I just sent you back. He goes, but I'm back from the future. And then Doc passes out.
That's kind of par for the course here, because this movie kind of goes over the same territory in a very welcome way that the first one did, because, they're stuck here and they have to figure out a way to get Marty back to 1985.
Yeah, it's always an issue with the DeLorean. The DeLorean is the problem.
It is the problem, but it's also the time periods that they're in, because it's not the DeLorean's fault that they're in the Old West and there are no gas stations.
I'm not purposely blaming the DeLorean. I did read, though, or I heard that once they announced that they were going to do a sequel, that they went out and started buying up every DeLorean they could get their hands on.
Oh, yeah,
because they needed stunt ones. And this one, you got one that rides on the rails of the train. You got one that's, well, I'm not going to ruin it for anybody who's not seen it. We'll get there. We are going to spoil this movie.
So if you're like me and you've never seen it, then yeah, like any other new movie that we review, go watch it and then come back.
Yes, correct.
So, and I would assume that there may be, when they're buying up all these DeLoreans, they're looking forward into the future. And hey, we need some cars to run the convention circuit as well.
Yeah, well, that's, other people who had one or scarfed one up because they're fans of this movie, and then trick them out, and then show up to all these conventions and then charge you $25 to stand in front of it.
Or even sit in it. Yeah.
Or have, the cast sign the hood, and now it's priceless.
So we already know that when you first saw this, you saw the first, second, third back to back to back.
Yes. Yeah. And apparently there were probably 20 screenings like that across the country.
And
which I was not aware of.
Times Square.
I saw it in Times Square, 1990. I was working Madison Avenue. New York was not cleaned up yet. It was full of pouring houses and homeless people. And yet there I was standing outside the line. Couldn't wait to get into this theater. Jam-packed, mind you.
Hosted by Thomas F. Wilson.
Yes, he was there. I didn't get to meet him at the time, but he was the host.
Oh, he wasn't signing? Even though he was there?
No. I don't. No, he just showed up on stage and basically talked about the movies and whatever.
And then was ushered out, I'm sure.
Yeah, he probably had a front row seat. He's probably never seen it. I don't know. I mean, it had already been released.
I mean, was he there at the beginning of the 3 movies, or was he only there before part 3 started?
That's a good question. My memory is very foggy around that. I don't know, and I have no one to corroborate with me because I was by myself.
Okay.
So for all you know, it never really happened. I'm making that up.
But I'm sure you do remember your initial thoughts after the movie was over.
Oh, of course. That's why we're talking about it now. Because...
So were you blown away, even at that early stage, seeing it one time?
Yes, because again, second one, while the second one left you wanting, and you were like, you know what, I'm done with this franchise. I didn't really have a choice because I sat through the first one, which I love, sat through the second one, which, as I mentioned last week, is the clunker in the bunch. And then I watched this, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am wearing my heart on my sleeve. I love this movie. I adore this movie. I will watch it ad nauseum. I have probably seen it well over 300 times. Anytime it's on, I will watch it. And even for this podcast, I'm like, I watch it so many times. I just need to do my research and maybe listen to the commentary. I still watched it.
Yes, of course.
I still watched it. And my wife was like, can you shut up because you're just repeating every line? I think that this is a perfect ending to this trilogy. I love the relationship between these two characters. I think it's a perfect coda. It goes out on a high note, and yet it sets you up just like the first one. It sets you up with, we're now going on to another adventure that you will never be party to. There was 2 seasons of the animated show, which I think that Gail and Zemeckis were both involved in either executive producing. And Christopher Lloyd came back and played his character. So he would do a live Doc Brown opening leading into the cartoons. And he was always doing some crazy experiment or whatever. But the cartoon was a continuation of this, where it was Marty, Doc, and the 2 boys, Jules and Vern, in the train and a DeLorean. And
when did this come out?
That's a good question. This came out in 90. So I'm going to say 92, 93. It ran for 2 seasons on Saturday morning. Wow. I have the DVD of season 1. I don't think I have season 2. They didn't reprise their voices, but like I said, Christopher Lloyd does reprise his character in live action, and they film new stuff for the Universal Back to the Future ride.
Of course, yes.
Which doesn't really fit in the continuity, but yeah, that's
and that was just Christopher Lloyd, right? I don't think.
Same thing. Where it was just when you were in the queue, it was just Doc Brown setting you up for your adventure.
So this movie is entirely set, with the exception of the very beginning and the very end. This movie is entirely set in the Old West. So you no longer have the time hopping that you have that kind of really spun your head around in the second movie. So it's a very focused plot.
It's a very straightforward, again, you start the movie back in 1955. Now 1955 Doc has to figure out how to get Marty back.
And I guess it's based from when I don't know if this is true or not, but the idea of setting this movie in the Old West came from Zemeckis just having a conversation with Michael J. Fox on the set of the first movie. Hey, if you could go back in time, what era would you most want to see? And Michael J. Fox said, the Old West. I want to be with the cowboys. And I guess that never left Zemeckis as an idea.
Yeah, I still say going back to the Old West must suck.
I know that'd be one of the last eras that I'd want to go to.
So hot and disgusting, and you're not shaving, and you're riding on a horse, and
people wanting to shoot you all the time.
Well, that is true. You'd have to have some skill sets. But yeah, I mean, they did. In the second movie, they did a really good job of kind of teasing you into the idea that, Marty's he's a sharpshooter with his video games, and that pays off in this. There's, little hints about the Old West. Doc Brown brings up the fact that he's a huge fan of the Old West.
I would have loved for him to say duck hunt, but I don't know if that was out. Yeah, because when they ask him, where did you learn to shoot? And I'm like, say duck hunt, say duck hunt. And he says 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven, which is even funnier. I don't think 7-Eleven has arcade games in it anymore.
No, they don't have comics anymore. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah. You got to make room for all those Slurpee machines.
And lotto tickets.
Oh, that is true. So the plot wise is that Doc is in the Old West.
So Doc's Western Union have been sitting on this letter for what, 70 years?
70 years.
And he's delivers it to Marty as he's standing right in the town square. Right after he goes back to the future in the first movie. And
stay with us now.
Stay with us. And gets a letter from Doc because the DeLorean's been hit by lightning and disappears. It turns out that the lightning blast has zapped the DeLorean back to the Old West. And that's where Doc has been living for 70 years in the moments that Marty has been there on the pavement in 1955. And right after Doc disappears, after being hit by lightning, this Western Union guy comes with this letter saying it's from Doc, from the Old West. Don't come
alive and well. Don't come back.
And it's an old yellowed, letter that's been sitting on a Western Union shelf for 70 years.
Right.
But of course, Marty can't let things be.
Well, it's because they go to dig out the DeLorean that Old West Doc buried in a mine, and they go to dig it out. And while they're there, they find his gravestone and realize that 2-3 days after he wrote the letter, he gets shot in the back by Mad Dog Tannen.
So Marty's justification for going back to save Doc is that he doesn't have a life in the Old West. He gets shot immediately after writing this letter. So in your opinion, and your time traveling opinion, if Marty let things lie, that tombstone wouldn't have changed. That photo of the tombstone of Doc's
Because that is the
date of
timeline.
death.
Right, correct.
So Marty had to go back. So if he let it go, then Doc would have been shot and killed.
Yeah.
So he had no choice.
Well, I mean, he still exists in the 1955 Doc.
He does. But his Doc, he was worried about. Because this is Doc, the 1955 Doc, but
correct.
It's not
this is 1985.
Doc.
But 1955 Doc would still be there waiting for him if he went.
Because as we see, because we talked about this last week, the idea of photos and newspaper articles changing to give the viewer an indication that somehow the timeline's been changed.
But again, that goes against the whole premise that you're creating an alternate timeline.
With that in mind, if there are alternate timelines, then this Doc would have been shot regardless. And when Marty goes back, he's creating an alternate timeline to that reality.
Right. It gets very confusing. What I find funny is that his tombstone dedicated by his beloved Clara. All right. If you break down, he dies September 7th. So that means that she doesn't even know him for more than a week. And yet somehow pays for his tombstone. Here's the other thing, too. He gets shot in the back because he owes Mad Dog Tannen $80. Did Doc not have a suitcase filled with money that he could have just paid him $80?
Well, he does say, what's the principle of the thing, right? He does say, I should have paid him off. At one point, I should have just paid him off.
You should have paid him off. You had a suitcase full of money. Yeah. Anyways. So now you got to send Marty back. So 1955 Doc is on board with this, even though 1985 Doc, who's now in 1885, doesn't want him to come back. 1955 Doc is like, all right, we got to do this. You got to save me.
Well, this Marty really has it much easier than the Marty in the first Back to the Future with 1955 Doc, because 1955 Doc already is on board. Well, but he's already out. This Marty doesn't have to convince this 1955 Doc who he is and where he's from, because this Doc already knows him. Yeah. So he's like, I sent you back once, I can send you back again. He certainly does. But
go back to the first Back to the Future movie. Doc would have got shot and killed by the Libyans if it wasn't for Marty to change him and tell him to put a bulletproof vest on.
Yes.
How many times are you going to save this old man?
From himself.
Sometimes
himself.
Timeline just needs to weed out the weak. I love Doc Brown, but dude, you maybe had this coming. I don't know. But this is my favorite version of Doc Brown. This is where
the one. Wait a second. That's 55 one or the one?
No,
the 85.
Our 1885 Western Doc Brown, who is now a blacksmith.
Okay,
he had set up shop as a blacksmith. So anyways, so we're getting ahead of ourselves. Anyways, so long story short, they go out to this really, really cool drive-in theater, Pokachi. Drive-in theater, and this is where Marty's going to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles an hour. There's no roads out there. They're in the middle of the desert. And I looked this up. Unfortunately, this is a set. They built this. This is not a real drive-in movie. They dress Marty in this ridiculous cowboy outfit, and it's got like nuclear fusion little atoms on it, which is a cool little motif. But yeah, the movie posters, you got the two movie posters are Tarantula. And what was the other one? Revenge of the Creature. Both movies, a very young Clint Eastwood starred in.
Oh.
And the marquee, the three movies, they were showing three movies on the marquee driving in. Francis in the Navy, Mon Pa Kettle in Waikiki, and Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. And I guess Clint Eastwood is in the Francis in the Navy. Francis, that was the mule, right?
The Talking Mule.
The Talking Mule.
Are they accurate to 1955?
They are all real movies. They may, I'm thinking they're all made prior to 1955. So they're already laying the groundwork with this Clint Eastwood thing.
Yes, they are. And they already have in part two, actually.
Well, I was going to say part two. Yeah. Again, they, sprinkling that stuff through. So Marty time travels right through the wall, filled with beautiful paintings of Indian warriors, only to encounter real Indians. And these Indians are not freaked out that a magic.
Yeah, because at first I thought like he was invisible because nobody even takes notice of him.
No, but I guess they're so afraid they're on the run because they're being chased by the cavalry.
The cavalry does the same thing to Marty. They just ride around him.
Right.
They don't even take notice of the car.
No, correct. You think that they would have been like, whoa, what just happened here? No, they don't give a shit. So he parks it in a little cave, gets chased out by a bear, and promptly gets knocked out, just like George in the first movie.
Yeah. And then he wakes up and there's Lorraine, but the Old West version.
you're my mom. Who are you? Yeah, this is where they kind of have fun with it because it's not his mom, even though it is played by Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
It's Maggie McFly
and Seamus.
And I think he does it. So they really toned down the in 2, you got Michael J. Fox running around as multiple versions of not only himself, but also his kids. So here he's only playing his relative, great
grandfather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, this should have been Crispin Glover. I like this character, and I think that Michael J. Fox does enough job of separating these two. The special effects, we talked about the Vista Glide last week, and how they could film multiple takes with same actor playing different characters. Some of the screenshots are so obvious, like when he hands the baby to him, and it's like a wipe, or there's always a tree in between. I mean, you're going back to like Parent Trap.
Special effects. It's very
like split screen.
It's very Han meets Jabba in the special edition.
Oh, even that. I think maybe a little bit better than that. Yeah, but it's funny. I've said this multiple times that I feel that there's like one Western set that every movie uses. This is it. When they built this set, the landowners asked them to keep it. And so Silverado was filmed here. A bunch of TV shows were filmed here. The only thing they did was the production said that you cannot keep the courthouse. And they took the courthouse
Of
away.
course. Yeah. You can't have that in your iconic courthouse in somebody else's movie or show.
No, but they did save a couple dollars by like half of the buildings are like just a front facade or under construction, like the town's just being built kind of a thing. Unfortunately, it was also burnt down by a lightning strike in 1996.
Is that true?
Ironically enough, yes. And you know what I also heard was that the town square in Universal's backlot was also damaged in a fire. And they referred to it as it was due to a security guard gone insane. And I'm like, how can you throw that out there and not elaborate? So I looked it up. And I guess in 2008, they were doing construction. It was a blowtorch being used on some asphalt shingling, and a fire broke out and damaged not only that, it damaged the King Kong Experience, as well as some musical archives that were in the backlot. But I don't know how that's a security guard gone insane, but it's like a guy running around with a blowtorch or something. But this is where we get our reveal of Hill Valley.
Marty, from this point on, tells everybody that his name is Clint Eastwood.
What kind of name is that?
The next day, he goes into the local saloon, and there's 3 aged card players there it's like the Statler and Waldorf of the Old West. They're commenting on everything that's going on around him. One of the guys that Jeff just did an impression of is a hound dog from the Aristocats, and he's in your favorite Disney animated movie,
Robin Hood. He's the Sheriff of Nottingham. That's right. I think they're all Harry Carey Jr. and Dub Taylor. All 3 of those guys are very, very well-known character actors from Westerns, including the bartender, Chester. His actor's name is Matt Clark. And his claim to fame going into this was he played the bartender in Outlaw Josie Wales and served Clint Eastwood a drink. So he serves Clint Eastwood 2 drinks in this. To me, this is fun because it's taking what has been set up in the other 2 movies and kind of flipping it, where it's now Marty who's more the rational person and Doc Brown is more the emotional, especially once we bring in Clara. We get this great immediately, like you said, he's in the saloon, and you get the hey McFly, and then you find out it's Mad Dog Tannen. They're making fun of him. What kind of name is that, Clint Eastwood? Look at his sneakers. What is that? Nike. So anyways, he brings out his pistol and he's like, dance. And then you got Marty breaking into a moonwalk, singing Billie Jean, which they actually had to get Michael Jackson's approval.
But does he sing Billie Jean, or does he just do the moonwalk?
He's muttering it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Like he said, like you can barely hear it underneath his breath. It's
such a stunt double doing the moonwalk. It's like you see Michael J. Fox shoulders up, then you see his feet, then shoulders up.
Wait a minute. Whoa. You're telling me that was not Michael J. Fox. You're blowing my mind right now.
They're pretty rough with Marty. They drag him behind their horse after this. they were going to hang him.
Yeah, and according to Michael J. Fox's biography, he was unconscious. He got his hair cut off when he was hanging. I don't think the production agreed.
I'm sure that they've got a harness on him, right? He's not actually hanging from his neck.
But apparently, yeah, according to his biography, rendered unconscious during hanging sequence.
Wow.
One of my favorite did you know facts. Are you ready for this? During Marty's dance sequence, that is Michael Winslow doing the sound effects of his feet.
Really? The Police Academy guy.
Yes, he got special thanks in the end credits. I'm like, we can't just need a Foley artist.
I know you can't Foley that better than Winslow could. It just doesn't sound right. Bring in Winslow.
Yeah, bring him in.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Bring in the big guns. But this is where we get introduced to Wild West Doc Brown, and I love this long gun. I love the rifle with the tricked out telescope on the top, because it's very steampunky Doc Brown. He's got the long white hair with the hat on and the duster. He just looks damn cool.
Really? This is the reveal of what the $80 means on the tombstone, where he shoed Mad Dog's horse. The shoe fell off, and this caused Mad Dog to drop his bottle of whiskey and shoot the horse. So
right. Bring the horse back. I'll reshoe him. I shot the horse.
Yep, that's not my problem.
Your problem.
Yeah. So he owes him $75 for the horse and $5 for the whiskey. And then Marty, if you can't figure that out.
I know Marty literally says, that's where the $80 come from. Yeah. Thanks, Marty. Thank you. Somebody really felt the need to put that in the script just to bring it home.
Yeah.
$80.
But again, the tombstone also mentions Clara. And so once Doc actually talks to Marty, says, I told you not to come back, but you're going to die in 5 days or whatever it is. And so then Doc's like, okay, I'm glad you came back. Let's go. You know, I don't want to die in 5 days, but I don't even know a Clara.
Right. That means no sense to me. Yeah. I don't have time for this stuff.
Yeah. And then it's established that, well, you know, the DeLorean's hidden, but it's out of gas. Let's just put some gas in it and go. Well, we can't do that, Marty. Well, what about the flux capacitor? That runs the time machine. It doesn't run the engine. So
how are you going to get this thing up to 88 miles an hour? And this is the scene that I told you was all over the posters in the subway back in 89, 90, was the DeLorean being dragged behind the 6 horses through the monument desert with the buttes in the background and everything. That was the big tease leading into this movie. Mm-hmm. So, and I think the horse got him up to 24 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think, the fastest horse can go like, what did they say? 35, 40 miles an hour?
Yeah.
At the most. But that's it. So they figure out the train might possibly be able to do it as long as they had a long enough section of track that exists both in 1885 and 1985. So they
You're not thinking fourth dimensional.
Yep. So they don't run into a building or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist yet.
But this is with the weird thing. So it's the bridge goes over Clayton Ravine. And again, we've mentioned Clara Clayton, the mayor, who originally they wanted Ronald Reagan for. But I guess he turned him down, even though he was a big fan of the first movie. So the mayor comes and he asks Doc to go and meet the new school marm, this Clara. And that's where he realizes Clara, like, well, if I just don't pick her up, then we'll never meet.
But nobody picks her up. That's the problem.
The horse goes amok and Doc has to save her from falling over the ravine. That's why the ravine was named after her, because a school teacher 100 years ago died. And he goes, well, that's now. Like, again, you're banging me over the head with the idea that, all right, that's the same person that dies. If Doc had gone to pick her up,
because it's the same timeline.
Right. If Doc had gone to pick her up, she never would have been on a horse by herself, and she never would have fallen over the ravine. So why would the ravine be named after her?
Like, to your point, he doesn't go to pick her up, and they say that's because she almost dies by falling off the ravine, and he has to save her. So, and I think that you're saying the same thing as I am. Is that because it's the same Doc and the same timeline? So
right, correct.
In either situation, she wouldn't have died in that reality. So,
well, I guess if Doc wasn't there, they would have asked somebody else who just
they would have asked. If Doc didn't exist in that reality, they wouldn't have just let her,
because what there wasn't a blacksmith there until he got there.
I don't know.
This time travel stuff is really making my head hurt. And you see he's got this giant concoction machinery going, and it's all just to create an ice cube so that he can have iced tea.
Well, I think Marty says it's a refrigerator, so maybe he's got some kind of compartment where he's keeping milk cold as well.
I don't know. Yeah. So, but it's a fun, that Doc has been busy still creating stuff.
Yes, and besides that contraption, he also has a giant train set that they use.
It's convenient. Well, he needs it.
Yeah.
Just in case Marty comes back and they got to figure out how to go.
Because they got to figure out where the point of no return is before they can't turn the train around anymore.
Yeah, I think the point of no return might have been the second movie.
Yeah, it was part 2.
So.
The midpoint of the movie revolves around the clock dedication ceremony. So the clock figures in heavily to all 3 movies.
Yeah. Do you notice when they actually take their picture with the clock that the time is 8:08?
I don't know what's significant about that.
I'm assuming it's a reference to 88 miles per hour.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I could be off on that. Maybe just aesthetically it looks nice, but like 10:10 is always like a perfect hand position if you want to take a photo of a clock. But Doc saves Clara and immediately falls in love. This and What's Eating Gilbert Grape have cemented Mary Steenburgen as one of my crushes. She is one of my celluloid crushes.
Time after time,
which would have been a perfect pairing with this movie, by the way. Another time travel.
Because I was reading a quote from her. She's basically playing the same character and the same.
Well, she didn't want to do this. Yeah, she didn't want to do this. Her kids are like, it's Back to the Future. You got to do this. How many people get stuck doing stuff because their kids are like, no, you got to do it. None of my kids said, yeah, Dad, you really need to be driving for a brown truck company.
At the clock dedication ceremony, Mad Dog challenges Marty to a duel. Of course, at the same time that they need to be on the train to get back. So Marty's like, sure, I'll be gone by the time this duel is supposed to happen.
This is actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
This whole setup. Because, and again, this is, I talked about this last week with Tom Wilson, just having a blast playing these different versions of Biff. And in this one, he really, you see, Dunder Biff at the end of the movie, but this character, he is having so much fun when he gets into the fight with Marty at the end, and he thinks that he's bested him, and he's just kind of like cockily dancing, and he's twirling the gun. I just think this guy is having way too much fun in this movie.
Yeah. But I love when Mad Dog actually challenges Marty. It's like, what about 7 a.m.? Because Marty says, what do you want to do at high noon? Noon.
Right. Yeah. Noon.
7 a.m. I do my killing before breakfast. And then Marty's like, how about 8? I do my killing after breakfast.
But that was before he's like, let's do this tomorrow. And he goes, no, we're robbing the bank tomorrow. Yeah. Well, what about Monday? Are we doing anything Monday? No, Monday's fine. All right, Monday. Run.
After that, you get a sense of how Doc and Clara can fall in love so quickly because it's their shared love of Jules Verne.
Damn straight.
She's a fangirl.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knew it?
Yep.
1885 fangirl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got that, when I read that To the Earth, to the Moon as a kid, she goes, as a kid, that came out like 5 years ago. This is a Doc Brown you haven't really seen up to this point. It's cute.
And at this point, the picture that Marty's been carrying around to the tombstone has gone blank. The name on it, at least, has gone blank. So it no longer says Doc Brown, but he points out to him at this point in the movie that it could be your name now on the tombstone because of this duel with Mad Dog. And then Marty says, great Scott. And then Doc says, yeah, it's heavy.
Like I said, they kind of have a little fun, kind of flipping some of this stuff around. But Doc and Claire are having this little cute meet at night, underneath the stars, and he fixes her telescope and whatever. Marty wakes up and there's another, it's like straight out of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, this whole breakfast thing machine that cracks the egg and makes the toast and whatever, and it's like Marty didn't even partake in the meal. I would have been eating it. Now he was too busy in his long johns practicing being cool in the mirror. You looking at me
showing off his buttock to the camera.
You think he had to work out? Think he got extra money for that? Michael, we're gonna want to see your buttocks.
Maybe he did. Yeah. Doc starts to waffle now, worse than Bill Clinton. He is like, well, one second he's like, yeah, I'm going to go back. And the next second, no, I can't let a photo determine my future. I'm staying. Oh, you're right. I'm going to go back. So
well, that's just
this guy doing.
We've always seen him like just the scientist. Like he's always rational. He's the one that gets him out of these situations. And now he wants to leave with his heart.
Finally decides, the going back is the right thing to do. Then Marty's like, well, just take Clara with you. Like he should know better by this time. Doc's like, no, I can't bring her with us.
Can we stop and buy that almanac again?
Yeah. It's like, no, okay, you're right, Marty. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go tell Clara the truth. And he does, and of course, she doesn't believe him.
Backfires spectacularly. Oh, I've heard some whoppers in my day. If you didn't love me, you should have just told me. Because he tells her he's from the future. He goes to drown his sorrows in the bar, in the saloon.
And he doesn't even drink. He just like, give me the bottle.
Well, this is the great thing, which is right. You see him lamenting, and he goes, oh, you think about your future. Oh, I could tell you about the future. And I cut the next morning, and he's still pontificating over there. He's like, how much has he had? He goes, none. That's his first. He hasn't touched it.
And then when he actually drinks it, he immediately collapses, and breaks through the table, which I thought was funny. That was a laugh out loud moment. Yes. But Mad Dog shows up early to the duel, ruining everybody's plans. And this is when on the tombstone, it suddenly appears in the photograph, Clint Eastwood on the tombstone. That's what you brought up last week, is that Marty in the first movie is not the main character that sees change. It's really George's story that Marty has to help along. And Marty is never really given an arc. So, as you said, in the second movie, for some reason, he's got this thing where he doesn't like being called a coward. And he has to get over that in the third movie.
It seems like a pretty easy thing to get over.
Yeah.
Because he's called Yellow throughout this entire movie.
But it's not really a choice. He's like, okay, die or be called a coward.
Well, that's just it. He's out there counting down. And he's like, what if I don't go out there? What's going to happen? He goes, you got a back door to this place? Yeah. And the bartender's like, yeah, in the back. Where else do you think it's going to be?
And then, of course, in a very Three's Company turn of events, Clara overhears somebody on the train as she's leaving town.
Poor boy, that poor soul.
Like Doc Brown had spilled his soul to this guy in the bar, and the guy in the bar is recounting it to someone else behind where Clara is sitting. So she gets off the train. So she, of course, now ingratiates herself into the ending, into the climax of them.
You can't. You set her up. You got to have it. She's on a movie poster, by the way.
And, this is a Zemeckis movie because they give you the Polar Express shot. How many years before Polar Express of that train going right into camera?
It's a great train. So there's a lot of sequences in here with the DeLorean in front of the train that is a model. It's probably it's a 6-foot model. Yeah. Blow my mind because they do have a full version of the engine. And here's the thing, which is, so when Doc and Marty steal the train, they uncouple all the other cars except for the tender. But you have 3 logs that are going to ignite. Why do you even need the tender? That car filled with wood. You're putting in these logs that are they're like Duralogs. That's going to kickapoo joy juice you into 88 miles an hour. Yeah, so why do you even need the tender car?
It's like multicolored Yule logs that he throws in that they all explode. Right.
And that's a great visual too. That Doc just happens to have this odometer that has the color exactly when the thing looks like it was professionally made. Maybe there was a printer in town. We do get numerous glances of the hoverboard that was taken from the future of the second movie that obviously plays into this as well.
Because the plan is that Marty gets in the DeLorean first. Doc throws in the multicolored Yule logs and then is going to follow Marty by, tiptoeing Jaws style on the outside of the train and get into the DeLorean with him until Clara comes into it because she rides her horse, gets on the train herself and gets Doc's attention. Marty has to throw the hoverboard back to them to save them from falling off the train. And then Doc decides in the spur of the moment, I am going to stay.
Well, I don't think he has a choice.
No.
Maybe at that point, they're at 70 miles an hour. How do you?
Yeah, and he can't. There's no way that he can get into the DeLorean at that point.
They were the stunt coordinators were very concerned about this DeLorean jumping the track while they were doing this sequence. So the close-ups of Marty hanging out the door are actually filmed in reverse.
Really?
Yeah. They're actually.
I was going to say that when they're doing the close-ups of Michael J. Fox, I'm like, that doesn't look like they're going 80 miles an hour. That's like a that's like a solid 60. 20. That's a solid 20 that they're filming right now.
But he does change positions. Like he's in the driver's seat and then he's in the passenger seat and then he's back in the driver's seat. And I'm like, you had that large console in between those two seats. How are you getting back and forth? But
I'll tell you, that train explosion is nice. I like that train explosion when it goes off the track.
That's another model. That's a model.
I would assume it was, but the way that they do it
is very spectacular.
Yeah,
because that's exactly what Marty says. He's like, all right, well, if the DeLorean goes back to 1985 and the bridge is intact, what happens to the train? He goes, it's gonna be spectacular. And that's exactly what happens. It just boom. And
I wonder if that influenced the beginning of Toy Story 3 at all.
Oh, interesting. It came out the same year as this? 92?
Toy Story 3?
Oh, 3, sorry.
3, because
I'm thinking
the whole opening scene with the Western and all that. That's not 2, or that's 3, isn't it?
That is 3. Yeah. 2 opens with the playing
with Buzz and
Zurg. Yeah. So Marty's on his way back to October 27th, 1985.
And he makes it. He makes it back because you get Wendy Jo Sperber there. You get the same guy. I don't know the actor's name that played his brother in the first one.
Do you know, this blew my mind. I just realized this. That's Jimmy Olsen from Richard Donner's Superman.
Right. You're right.
How many times have I watched these movies and never picked up on that? That's Mark McClure.
You're right. Wow. I didn't even cross my mind. Didn't even cross my mind.
And I'm just like, how do I not know this? Yes.
And then we also get the fake Crispin Glover in the background, stays on the porch.
With his sunglasses on.
Yep.
Lorraine, have you seen my glasses? Marty gets his truck. You know what's funny is that everyone wanted that DeLorean, but I wanted that damn Toyota 4x4. I don't know if I've ever seen one of those trucks out on the road. That's a sweet little ride. And of course, he races over to Jennifer, and there she is.
Now,
fast asleep.
Now, don't her parents wait up for her? Didn't they even step outside to see where she was?
No, nobody cared. They read the script. Stay inside.
She's like, did I miss the third movie? Yep.
Right. Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah. You didn't read your contract very well because you didn't have much to do. Marty, I had the weirdest dream. But this is where Needles comes back in.
Flea, looking more like the Flea that we knew then.
Flea does not look like the kind of guy that's driving around with his buddies, rocking out the Huey Lewis in the News.
And all with Pepsis in their hands.
Well, it's some product placement going on there.
Yeah.
This is another one of the little tie-ups that we need to do from the second movie.
Because again, Needles calls him chicken, and he has to get over that.
What's the matter, McFly? Chicken?
As you said, the tie into the second movie, because it's established that Marty has had an accident and he can no longer play guitar because he injured his hand. Yeah. And you assume that this is the accident that he avoids because Needles wants to drag race him, and Needles barely avoids hitting a car that comes out at the next intersection. It was a Rolls Royce.
Not even at the stop sign. There was no light there, so he just ran that stop sign.
The Rolls Royce would have careened right into him.
Yeah. But the guy was at fault. So Marty could have sued him and made a lot of money and probably got that hand fixed. I don't know. I'm just speculating. We're skipping a beat, which is when he jing, 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 jing comes back onto the track and immediately realizes that there's a train barreling down on him, jumps out of the DeLorean just in time to see it be demolished.
Yes.
Destroyed. And that is very heart-wrenching because that is the third character in this movie. That DeLorean is as much beloved as Marty and Doc.
But you saw it coming because Doc says more than once.
Number time. Yeah, I need to destroy this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get back, we're gonna dismantle it. It's not gonna cause nothing but trouble. Yeah, but you made 3 movies out of it, so you made some money. Mm-hmm. It is still, this thing is just pieces. There's nothing left. And that train doesn't stop, by the way. I'm pretty sure there's protocols in place.
It seemed to be like it was like a shot for shot. If you've ever seen The Road Warrior, when Humongous,
that face on shot. You're right.
When Humongous gets obliterated by the truck, that's what this looks like.
Yeah. There is apparently there were explosives inside. If you go frame by frame, you can actually see the light go off just before the train hits it. It is a physical effect. The train does hit this, but it's obviously enhanced by explosives inside to make it shatter apart.
Right.
And there's nothing left. Your time circuits go bloop. I still want to know how they do the little license plate spinning. It just seems like such a simple effect, but Like, does somebody stand there on the corner and then spin it and then just step back and they film it? Like,
all right, go.
Right. Maybe Michael Winslow is still there.
Maybe.
So, yeah. And then he says, well, Doc, because Marty doesn't think he's ever going to see Doc again.
But we do see Doc come back with Clara and the two kids, seemingly ignoring his own advice to not mess with the time-space continuum.
He's got a cool train now. You got to show it off. And that train was out front of the Universal ride for quite some time.
I remember.
Yeah. And you're like, what is this from? Because I've never seen Back to the Future.
Well, I assumed. I did know. I wasn't completely in the dark. I knew it was a Western, so that did make sense.
But it's a cool. It's kind of like seeing the giant rebel frigate at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's like one of those things that were hidden. But it's a cool because it's very Jules Verne-ish in nature. Obviously, they've gotten married and procreated, and they have two little kids, Jules and Verne. And of course, he had to come back for Einstein. And this is the crux of the movie, which is, your future's not written yet. So make it a good one. Where are you going, Doc? Future? Nope. Already been there. And that's it. The end. But yes, Zemeckis and Gale have gone on record that even though the studio owns the rights to this, they own the title. They do not own the rights to any of the characters, and there will never be a sequel or a reboot without them being involved. And at this point, they said it's not going to happen. And we would never do it without Michael J. Fox. Because I think Michael J. Fox has come out and said, well, listen, it'd be cool if I became like the Doc Brown type of character, which makes sense. I mean, now you're going like Star Wars.
So once these guys pass, which eventually will happen, then it'll never occur. They'll never be able to give their consent.
Never say never, because
unless their estates change their mind.
If there's money to be made, listen, never say never.
Yeah. So not only did we hold this movie in higher regard than part two, but a lot of critics at the time did as well. Because the general consensus of critics that I was reading would always compare it, of course, to part two, because the two are really kind of intertwined in everybody's mind.
Yeah. Even though 2 actually has higher IMDb score than 3.
Really?
Yeah, by 2 points. Don't agree with that.
Leonard Maltin, who's usually a curmudgeon, said there's real movie magic at work here, was his assessment. And again, that was the majority of the critics liked it better than part 2, and some, compared it favorably even to part 1. Mm-hmm. But we did have some negatives.
Oh, of course.
Vincent Canby.
Guess, Roger. Oh no,
Roger Ebert didn't like it. I did read his assessment.
You know what, Ebert? Boy, he is really every week now. This guy's just dropping a notch in my book.
But Vincent Canby of the New York Times said that the movie looks as if it could be the beginning of a continuing television series, criticizing the cheap look of the Western set. And that's actually what Ebert said as well, is that it obviously takes place on a set of a Western town, and it looks it, I think was the quote
Ebert,
that I read
has
from
Ebert
him.
ever really been on a real Western town? Come on. They all look the same. Like I said, it's one set for every freaking Western movie ever made. That is not a criticism.
No, of the movie itself, no. Well, what do you want them to do? Go back in time and actually film in a real Western
you got
town?
a time machine.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So, Jeff, I already know what your buckets are going to be on this, but the audience, our listening audience, does not.
Well, do you want to get into some fun facts?
Yes, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have a lot of them. Yeah, let's get into that.
Okay. Well, this is so the one thing we didn't talk about is in the town festival when they're celebrating the clock tower and the clock's coming in. We have a ZZ Top cameo. ZZ Top is there as the band, who were huge. You couldn't turn on MTV without seeing these guys all over the place, even though they've been around since the 70s.
They were one of these bands that had a lot of bands when MTV came in, because they weren't necessarily photogenic. The radio era turned into the video era. So if you didn't look the part, then you kind of got shuffled off. But somehow ZZ Top, maybe it's more of a credit to the directors that they chose for their videos, like Legs or Sharp Dressed Man or one of those things. They were MTV monster hits. And remember that video for TV dinners with the monster coming out of the dinner?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah, that's one that you didn't see that often.
You didn't see that often, but that was one of those ones that you waited for because it was so cool.
Right. But that's because they created a brand. You know, you got the two guys with the long beard. The one guy without a beard at all. You know what his name is?
The Beard.
Frank Beard. And I think we just lost Dusty.
We did.
Right? Yeah. All their videos were, and I'm not saying anything that, you know, anybody who grew up in the MTV era, they were not just guys up on stage playing a song. They always played like these enigmatic characters that showed up and saved the day, and it was always some chick with her car broken down in the desert, and they had this Ford Eliminator, which was a very stylized souped up coupe with the ZZ across it, and that became like their identity, you know. And they would do the little wave, and they always had, you know, the shtick with the guitars spinning around.
And they never, I don't think they'd ever drive off in the car. It would just disappear.
No, they would. Right. The car was like an entity unto itself.
Yeah.
So the great story is when they were on set, Bob Gale got stuck dealing with their manager. And this guy would not stop talking about the fact that they needed to use this Ford Eliminator as the time machine. What? Like this was, and Gale's like, it's a timepiece. You can't bring this car in from like the 70s in the 1800s. And he finally like had to pawn him off on somebody else because this guy just would not stop talking about it. But I thought that was pretty funny. One of the other things is this gentleman named Simon Wells. He was a storyboard artist, and he storyboarded the entire train sequence, and he was one of the chief animators on Roger Rabbit. This guy is H.G. Wells' grandson.
Wow.
And he was uncredited because he was not in the union, so they had to give him a special credit at the end. But speaking of Roger Rabbit, during that, we talked about this during the Roger Rabbit episode, is the fact that when Marty's getting dragged around behind the horses, they used Benny the car, the little motorized car that they used to drive around in, Bob Hoskins and Roger.
Yeah.
They used that on set to drag him around and to put they mounted the cameras on there. So yeah, Benny the car probably got a special credit as well.
Interesting.
Yes. I don't know. What else do I got to bring to the table? Tom Wilson did all his own stunts. So that was kind of cool. Again,
including the dance that he did after he shot Marty.
Oh, that's actually there's a deleted scene where apparently he kills Marshall Strickland, shoots him.
Really?
And I guess, yeah. Early test screenings deemed that way too dark, so they got rid of it. So I did not know that.
I don't think it's Strickland that shows up at the end to arrest him.
No, that's
some other guy.
I think it was the deputy.
Because that's probably why. Because he's already dead. So
there is a tell. I guess there's a cut that you can see somewhere toward the end, but yeah, I guess they just figured it was way too dark. The iconic little piano tinkle that you hear, ding, you know, throughout the movie.
Yes.
That's actually stolen from the soundtrack from the original Time Machine movie. I guess it's
H.G. Wells Time Machine.
The H.G. Wells Time Machine. Yeah, they were in the 1960 with Yvette.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not know that either. And Bob Gale and Zemeckis were both asked if they have any props. Bob Gale actually owns the Mr. Fusion, which was turned into a lamp.
Oh, I was going to say they didn't turn it into a composter. That would be
an actual working composter. Yeah. No, and I guess Zemeckis has the time circuits, or maybe it's the other way around. But those are two of the few things I think that remain. And you know, Lucas was like saving everything that was ever touched on screen by Star Wars. I think some of these guys realized that the stuff is of value and put it away somewhere.
Back to the Future 3. Jeff, how many buckets would you give it?
I'm giving it 5 buckets. You know I'm giving it 5 buckets.
Yeah.
I love this movie, but
let's know. I know this is big news. So this means it officially is now part of our 5 bucket list. So I want to do the fanfare right now, right up front.
Here we go. Back to the Future 3 is 5 bucket movie.
5 buckets. Now, the big question I have.
Oh no, if I had to pick 1 or 3.
If you had to pick 1 or 3, what would it be?
I'm telling you right now, I enjoy watching 3 much more
than
1. Yeah. But I know that whenever somebody picks a 5 bucket, it negates anyone else's, but I really want to know what your thought was on it.
It was actually a joy to watch. This would have dawned on me back in 1990 as well. I would have had the realization then as I did now, this is much better. than the second one. It is its own film, has a set beginning and end. It's, it's complete in itself. Yeah. So 2 is very weird to take on its own. So I really liked it, and I'm going to give it, if this wasn't a 5 bucket episode and I was going to give my own buckets, I'd give it 4 buckets.
Okay, and that's high for you, so.
Yeah.
That was my big, like I said, going into this, I'm like, Jim has never seen this before. Like, this is all brand new. I'm over here reciting the dialogue ad nauseum. And so, I was like, if he doesn't like it, whatever.
No,
hey, whatever.
No. How could I not?
I don't know. Listen, apparently Roger Ebert didn't like it.
And I'm not a huge Western fan. But
no, but I think just enough Westerns that this, and again, the whole idea of Marty stealing, we saw it set up in the second movie, the Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood using the cover of the and that's a great, everyone thinks that he's shot, as an audience, he's not shot, but you don't know exactly how he's getting out of it. And he put on a bulletproof vest, just like he told Doc to do in the first movie.
Yeah. And that's actually probably another big reason why I didn't see it back in the day, is because I wasn't a Western fan. So that was just another reason for me not to go to see it. But that's besides the point.
Right, correct.
It gives you that same flavor that I got from watching the first Back to the Future, that the second one was missing.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack.
Yes,
that's it. We're done. We're never going to talk about Back to the Future again. Yeah. I am very sad. This is what you talk about all the time, which is you like to keep your some of your higher ranking movies in the pocket, because once we talk about them, that's it. We're done.
There's nothing to look forward to.
And then what anymore. Do? You go back and listen to that episode? Yeah. Oh, I remember when I said that.
Yeah. Or we can do a TMI rewind and pawn it off as a new episode.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well, people don't seem to realize that we've got almost 200. This is what, 248th episode.
Yeah.
There's a whole plethora of.
Yeah, there's some good. Don't just listen to the new ones. There's some good ones back in the catalog.
They count if you go and listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, like, subscribe.
Yes, please. Okay, so
we're
leaving the Old West, and we're going into the 1990s.
That's still the Old West.
It's still the Old West.
That's still 30 years ago.
So let's go to the concession stand.
Okay.
Let's avoid that steaming pile of green manure in the lobby and go to the concession stand. And we'll be right back to discuss Timecop.
Class, come to order. Pay attention just once. We have a lesson to teach to the dunce. Is the candy good conviction?
Now the baking is perfection.
Have we got a good selection?
We invite your close inspection.
Is the ice cream not delicious? Healthful, tasty, fun, nutritious. Is the popcorn crisp and healthful?
Yeah, and it is sure a mouthful.
Is the soda cold and fizzy?
Vitamins keep the bubbles busy.
That's good. The lesson is learned. The trip to the sweet spot you have earned. Now is time for intermission. Treat yourself to some nutrition.
Okay, we're back.
I had no clue that this is based on a Dark Horse comic series.
No, neither did I.
But as we mentioned, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yes.
At the height. This was pretty much at the height of his.
This movie, from what I understand, is his highest grossing movie, period.
Ooh.
So if he were in frequently asked questions about time travel, the editors would kill him immediately after he filmed this movie.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're going nowhere but down.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was his pinnacle. So this was released in September of 1994. So it was the post-summer season. Usually like the second most popular month where maybe the third most popular month where movies go to die. I think January and August are up there, but September's not far behind. But still managed to be his number one grossing movie. It made 101 million at the box office.
Wow.
On a 28 million budget.
28 million.
I think 40 of that box office was in the US, and then 101 was worldwide.
I thought you were going to tell me 40 million was spent on those time sleds.
You
that
see
went
that?
Nowhere.
Where'd they go? Yeah, what happened
great
to
visual,
them?
but you're right. Do you come out the other side in the time
Why
sled?
bother with that whole
Just jump through
conceit?
the hole. Save yourself a couple bucks. If you got a really running start, you can just jump right through that little circle right there. That's a time warp. Just go.
Director here, Peter Hyams. if you look at his resume, lots of big sci-fi movies that he did. Not necessarily huge hits, but I think,
just big sci-fi movies.
Big sci-fi movies. Capricorn 1 was one of them.
Oh, wow.
Outland, Sean Connery. If you remember that one.
I have not seen that. That's the one in space, right?
Yes, it is. It is.
Sean Connery, space.
The sequel to 2001, 2010, he directed. And then Running Scared with Billy Crystal.
We tried to watch that the other day. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Really? It's not streaming at all?
I don't know.
That's the one with Gregory Hines, right?
Yes,
Billy
that's
Crystal.
A great movie.
Yeah,
that is a lot of fun. Those two guys together.
So this guy directed all these movies, and also this movie Timecop. Now, I was reading some stuff, some quotes from this director, and he's like, I was not a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'd seen a few of his movies, but I wasn't a fan of his. But
I thought you loved these movies. But Hard Target.
But no, I'm not talking myself.
I'm sorry. Okay,
I'm talking the director. Like I'm just reading an interview.
Said, wait a minute.
Yeah, no. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
Myself.
Okay.
But the director's like, I wasn't a fan. But I saw this as the opportunity because the script was clever and Sam Raimi was involved. Again, Sam Raimi producing.
Yeah, crazy.
I saw the opportunity to make the best Jean-Claude Van Damme movie ever made. And some would say that he did that. I wouldn't personally. I still like Hard Target.
Hard Target, which came out prior?
A year before this. 1 year before.
I was going to say 92, so 93. Okay.
Yeah.
Which we did cover, by the way, if you want to go back and listen to that one.
Yes, we did. Just like Back to the Future, it starts off present day. Timecop, 1994 would be present day to this movie. First, I'd just like to say that I got a copy of this from my library rather than streaming it. And it was an ancient DVD from the dawn of DVDs. Yeah. Like, I think it was like a 1998 DVD. And it still said, just like VHS tapes did, this film has been modified to fit your screen.
Oh, no.
Yes. So
I got mine. Well, mine was the DVD as well, but I don't remember seeing that.
Yep.
That's like the kiss of death when you see that.
I know. It's like I'm not seeing the full movie here.
Right. Well, we didn't have big widescreen TVs back then, so you got to crop it. Boy, I remember getting in fights with people when, widescreen first came out, and they had the black bars at the top and the bottom. It's like, well, why can't they just remove those so I can see the rest of it? No, that's all of it. That's
because they're there. You're seeing the rest of the screen.
Up, yeah, exactly. I don't need to explain to you, but I apparently. But yeah, I mean, this is a big name. You got Ron Silver, who pretty big name guy,
and what a scumbag he is in this movie.
Well, I think he does play a lot of scumbags.
Yeah. You think to yourself, he plays these so well. Is he a scumbag?
Maybe. Listen. We got the scumbag role, and we could only think of you.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Yeah. But Mia Sara.
Yes. And I remember seeing this in the theater, saying, "Oh, I haven't seen her since Legend or Ferris Bueller or whatever it was." Yeah,
Legend.
Yep. And you see a lot more of her in this than you do in Legend or Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, they don't waste much time. They don't waste any time getting naked. Hope her husband doesn't come home.
And let me just say that they don't do opening credits like this anymore. The entire credits are like in the opening of this movie. Like they take 5 minutes.
I want to know, right? There is a point in time where someone just said, "We're not doing this anymore.
We're not even going to do the title of the movie until the end."
That's why Lucas ended up breaking away from the Directors Art Guild, because Star Wars just opens with Star Wars. You don't get any credits, and he was fined for that. And so he said, "Screw you." And so he left the union, and that's why he couldn't get Spielberg to direct Return of the Jedi.
Wow. But is that saying that Spielberg would have directed Return of the Jedi?
I believe that was the plan. I think that's exactly who he wanted. Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. It would have been a completely different movie. So anyway, Sam Raimi, producer on this, although it doesn't really have any Sam Raimi-esque. Not like
qualities. Hard Target. Hard Target did. Because if you remember, Lance Henriksen was the human hunter in Hard Target, and I think a crossbow may have been one of his weapons of choice. So whenever he shot the crossbow, you got the point of view of the crossbow, just like in an Evil Dead movie or whatever.
Well, you're right, correct.
Yeah, but you didn't really get that. Yeah, nothing like that here.
No, but you talk about the opening of this movie, and it opens in 1863 to this Confederate army being stopped by this guy who unloads on them with a laser assault rifle. And I'm like, this is how you open a time travel movie.
Yes.
It's a time heist. They are stealing the gold from a Confederate army. How is that not screwing up the timeline?
And now this is one of those movies where with one phrase title, you know exactly what you're going to get in this movie. Yeah. You're going to get a cop and he's patrolling time.
Yeah.
So you know the plot. If you never even saw a trailer, if you just hear that title, you know what the movie's about.
Like, wait, RoboCop? It's a robot who's a cop. Yeah. Super cop. He's super. Yeah. No, but you're right though. It's a time cop. Everything you need to know right then and there.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that's why you saw this. I can't see you as a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan back in the 90s and going to see this just because he's in the movie. You're a time travel fan.
Well,
you're a time travel fan.
Not only that, we talked about this last week. The split heard around the world because there is the scene where he's being assaulted in his house, and the guy there's water on the ground, and he shoots the taser. So the floor is electrified.
You could tell the screenwriter, the director, we have to have him do a split. How can we achieve this in this movie?
Well, you have to. Well, that's like, having a Jackie Chan movie. It's like, well, we don't really want you to do any special effects or any fighting. We're just going to have, you gotta cater to your star.
Yeah,
I can do that. So yeah, he does that fantastic. Although watching it this time, I always had it in my head that he literally just like lifted off the ground and split his legs, but he does use his hands to support himself on the counter as he pulls his legs. But
he also flexes with one of his arms. Like he holds his arm out, does a flex just for the camera.
How many shots do you think they did? Can we do that again? Let's do it again. But there was a point in my life, probably late 80s, early 90s. Like we went to the theater. This is when I was living in Queens and working in Manhattan. We went to the movies all the time. It didn't matter what was playing. But yeah, this was a must-see movie. This was a movie like, we got to go see that.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a confession right here about seeing this movie. Back in the day, I used to work for the Laureate's book chain. And this is actually how I know Christina, who is taking a hiatus from our show currently.
Who?
Because she used to work at the same store that I did, the same Laureate's bookstore in the Poughkeepsie Galleria Mall. I don't know if she was working at this point. She probably wasn't. This was probably past her sojourn there. But I was working with a friend of mine named Rich Kersner. If you're listening, hello out there, Rich.
Hey, Rich.
And we would often on Friday nights be tasked to work 2 hours overtime after the store closed to clean it up and do inventory or what have you. So we would often take this time. We would risk that somebody would actually call to see if we were there to just leave and go to the movies.
Wow. While you're on the clock.
While we're on the clock. Then we'd come back and we'd punch out.
Wow.
And this was one of those nights we went to go see Timecop and had a blast. And then we saw several movies around this time doing this. And Timecop was just one of them. We were all fans of Jean. I think me more so than him, but he had a great time with the movie. I remember we laughed out loud several times. I think The Split was one of those times. Yeah.
You laughed?
We laughed. The audience laughed.
I don't remember that. I don't remember people laughing. I'd be like, look at that.
They laughed with joy. They were laughing with him, not at him.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, good. So, well, speaking of laughing, so we're introduced to this, Time Enforcement Commission. And like you said, they take like 1 minute to set up everything, which is, we got this time travel department now. And the guy's like, well, beam me up, Scotty. Star Trek was not time travel. Thank you very much, first and foremost. But they set the rules, which you can't go ahead in time because it hasn't been written yet. And I'm like, so they got the Doc Brown note.
Yep.
Future's not been written. And you can't kill Hitler because then you create ripples in a pond.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly are you going to do? Because now you're talking about the butterfly effect. Anything that you do in the past, anything that you touch, you're stealing gold.
So how can you go back to the future if you can't go into the future because it hasn't been written?
Oh, well, so you're saying from 1994, you can go back to 1895 and then return to 1994 because that is your current timeline. You couldn't go like a day ahead.
Okay.
Come back the day after,
So that's who we see at the beginning, these, the time heist where they steal the gold from the soldiers in the Civil War. That's why they set up this T.E.C. because the gold is suddenly on the black market, like in 1994.
That gold was used to fund somebody's fighting efforts or to pay off somebody. So now you're changing history.
Yeah.
There's nothing you killed those guys.
So everything that happens in this movie would create a ripple effect.
Correct.
That they're so afraid of.
Yeah. Even at that one point, that guy Lionel, you see him going back to the stock market crash and he's buying stocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually pretty smart. But again, people with more brain power than me can figure out, all right, well, if you bought up those stocks and someone else was unable to buy those stocks, so now their fortunes have changed. There's ripple effects. Too many ripple effects.
Speaking of him, that character Lionel, that whole sequence is done, fast motion in the trailer in black and white with the 20s music in the background. So when you watch the trailer, you think you're seeing a trailer for a 20s movie. It suddenly stops being black and white and color when he picks up the Walkman and is listening to the heavy metal at his desk.
Oh, get out of here.
And then Jean-Claude comes into it. So it's a very clever way to put the trailer together.
It almost sounds like the trailer's better than the movie.
Yeah, that's I think maybe that's part of why it's his biggest hit, right? Because of that trailer.
Oh, I don't remember that at all. I'll have to go back and check that out. But yeah, we get all these little tips about, there's never enough time and, time is of essence. And we got all these little isms floating around.
And there's, songs with time motifs are played and heard. Like, I think the Chicago song, does anybody know what time it is?
Time it is
in there? Yeah. Then you get like the lamest mugger in cinema history is introduced in this mall scene, a roller skating bandit.
Oh, they were, they were at the height of their
the most garishly
popularity.
dressed, like right from 1986 in 1984.
Right.
With a swinging gold chain, roller skates.
It's almost like he had to stop, take the purse off the old lady, put it on his shoulder, and then skate away.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't one fluid motion.
If he doesn't stop, he's going to roll right into Claude Van Damme's outstretched foot. That purse doesn't look good on you.
Write your material, sir.
Can you read what's on my boot? Wolverine? That's right.
Wolverine. Yeah, I did read that they tried their best to kind of have him emulate Wolverine from the comic books. Like even his hairstyle and the fact that he wore Wolverine boots. I'm like, wow, that was a little ahead of the curve, right?
That is. That's like 6 years before the X-Men movies came out.
That was 2000,
that character had a resurgence.
Yeah. Resurgence. He never
did, but to the public at large.
Yeah, correct.
Outside of comic book.
Right? Yeah, I kept waiting for Loki and the Time Authority to show up here with Mobius. Yeah,
there's a cute little thing where Jean-Claude comes up behind Mia Sara in the mall and he's like, "Who are you waiting for?" And it's like, "Oh, my husband." Well, forget him. Let's go off. And of course, it is her husband.
That's why I said, she goes home and immediately has sex with him. I'm like, I hope her husband doesn't come home.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, later in the movie, he comes back to her and she's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, it's how do you not recognize him?
Yeah.
His hair is 3 inches long. That's it. It's 3 inches longer than the last time you saw him.
He's got the same lump on his forehead that
who talks like that, by the way? How many people are out there with that accent?
They live in an empty house. Apparently they just moved in because there's no furniture or anything in this house. And she's got to tell him something.
He doesn't have time.
Exactly as a audience member what she's going to tell him, but he's got no clue.
He couldn't figure it out.
Nope. Can it wait till later, please? Because he's a cop and they call him in because somebody called in sick. So he's about to walk off the porch and suddenly these future guys come, attack them both. And then you realize later on in the movie, they're coming from the future to wipe him out because he's a problem.
The house blows up and you're like, how did, wait a minute, what? The house just blows up. But yeah, you're right. Later in the movie, it's kind of laid out and explained.
They shoot him, but he's got a bulletproof vest on. So they're not successful in killing him.
Yeah. Well, you got the note from Marty. Guys are going to come back in time and try and kill you.
And then the picture fades to black and the music fades too. It's like they couldn't even coordinate that, It's like
one or the other.
Yeah. So then you get the 20 scene in Wall Street, and that sets up who he is now. He is part of the T.E.C. and he is a time cop. So he goes back to 1929 to stop this guy from buying stocks.
I would have liked to have seen a little more of this because this is actually a cool concept.
Now, this guy, you find out, was also his partner. So that's how he can get back and forth in time. Like, this guy would never be Jean-Claude Van Damme's partner, this weaselly, lame-looking guy. Atwood, Lionel Atwood, right? Is the guy's name? So his ex-partner.
So. Yeah.
But Atwood says that he is doing this to fund the senator's campaign, Senator McComb's campaign, again,
Who
played
is
by
Ron Silver.
Yeah. So in order to become president and rule the world, McComb needs like all the money in the world to do so. Sounds a little familiar to real life events, I must say. But
Are you implying that there's someone out there who has time travel abilities?
perhaps there is.
Wow.
Perhaps there is.
But I think McComb at one point threatens to kill Lionel's grandparents. I'm like, but if that happens, then he won't be around to steal the money for you. So,
and he tries to jump out the window, just as many people did in the 20s.
Yeah, just another jumper.
Walker is who Jean-Claude is playing here. Max Walker jumps
Walker.
out after him, and of course they go through the time portal in midair as they're free falling down to the pavement. Now, again, this begs the question, because later on you see the reason that they can time travel is they get into this vehicle at their T.E.C. headquarters that goes, and maybe it's 88 miles per hour that they hit.
Right.
But when they arrive back in time, they're not in the vehicle. They're just
it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever.
And then when they go back, they're in the vehicle again.
Yeah. So where is this thing parked in the past?
Yeah. It's not even parked anywhere because you see them enter the past without the vehicle there.
Yeah. It's like two different people filmed this. It's like, all right, we're going to.
Yeah. As you said, there was no need for this vehicle. I think they only had it for a cool set piece to have.
It's cool to look at, but it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
It makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the treatment of the time travel because the younger version of McComb gets scratched. And the older version, the current version, the 94 version, suddenly has a scar on his face.
Right.
To reflect that.
That was,
and I'm like, that is kind of a neat,
that's
like,
good.
Wow. So I could pull out your heart in the past and you'll just drop over dead in the future. Yeah.
And so this is funny too, because he brings Atwood back for his crime of playing the stocks, and he gets the death penalty in 2004. And the way that they kill him is they send him back to 1929 and throw him out the window. They let him continue.
So he's just another,
So that doesn't cause ripples? This guy's dead body that doesn't belong there?
I don't know. Once again, it's a time travel movie. You can't think too hard about it. So, but I will tell you, if my future self came back and told me to lay off the cookies, I'd tell him to go himself. Lay off the candy bars. Pretty sure I would have just killed my future self right then and there. Shut up, man. You don't know what I'm going through.
It turns out McComb needs, I think there's a scene that establishes that McComb needs $50 million in order to successfully do this presidential campaign. And that's what he's going back to steal, is $50 million. You see a bit of the 2004 version of the future, and you see like the future car, which
this is like the worst looking future car.
And all they did was they like created like a fiberglass shell and put it on a real car and then drove that real car down the street. That's what it looks like.
This looks like the car that Homer designed in Simpsons. It probably had 12 cup holders. But I will say, if you really wanted to raise $50 million, just go back a couple years and put extra money in your 401k. You're not changing the timeline there. You're not stealing from anybody. You're not killing anybody.
No.
I like to put my whole paycheck in there.
Walker drives this ridiculous car back to his apartment, and he's watching, there's like TV news on, and they're talking about like the presidential campaign. And there's one party that's the white supremacist party. I'm like, this also sounds funny.
Hitting a little too close to home.
Yeah. So this is where this is the most famous scene in cinema history takes place here, where there's the fight in the apartment and one of the guys has a taser as his weapon of choice. And now this is how they justify Jean-Claude doing the split, because like water spills, the guy tases the floor into the water. And then of course, Jean-Claude has to do the split, flexes, and then the guy electrocutes himself, but doesn't die. Because he comes back later, the same guy.
Just a little crispified.
Just a little crisp, yeah. So it's funny. My wife says, oh, this is the movie where he does the split. Like, yep. So now we get Gloria Reuben's character. I'm thinking to myself, I know her so well. Where do I know her from? She was on multiple seasons of ER. So that's where you know Gloria Reuben. So she plays Fielding, an internal affairs cop assigned to follow him. And there's a little funny exchange between the two, because apparently she's never done the time travel thing before, and she's freaking out when they get in the car. And they keep mentioning the Vollmer twins, who apparently were the first prototype that tried this and then died horribly. And he says, and she asks him, well, who are the Vollmer twins? What happened to them? You see those 2 red spots on the wall? Those are them.
Great. Hope you worked out the kinks.
I also want to mention that Jean-Claude takes out a stick of gum and chews it before, just like he's getting on an airplane, so his ears won't pop. But apparently that brand of gum was a Japanese brand of gum called Black. And Jean-Claude actually did an ad in Japan for this gum that same year.
Oh, I was going to say before or after.
The same. I don't know if it's before or after, but it's basically product placement in this movie. But just like nobody in the U.S. Nobody in the U.S. would know.
But they're also not showing you the label. It's not like, he held it up. Black.
Right.
That sounds yuck.
It's probably like black licorice, right?
Yeah.
So now he's going back to 1994. So they're actually, what they're doing is they're investigating the senator. He's co-owning this cold company. I don't even know what they do. Refrigeration
I don't know. Yeah, that was a little convoluted.
So in the normal timeline, his partner in this company buys him out, the senator. But the senator is going back in time to stop this from happening because this company blows through the roof as soon as the senator is out of it. So they're trying to kill the guy that buys him out. So the senator is the only one that owns this cold company, thus giving him $50 million in the future to easily pay for his presidential campaign. And again, I think that this company was just set up for the fact that Jean-Claude could freeze a guy's arm and kick it off.
Break it off.
Which is a really bad effect now when you see it.
Come on. Yeah.
But I loved it when I saw this in the theater.
Of course.
And then afterwards he says, I should have said freeze after he kicks the guy.
If you were Schwarzenegger, you would have.
You would have if you were Schwarzenegger,
freeze.
Right.
Everyone had a tagline back then.
But yeah, kicks the guy's arm off. So all that's left is like the side of his body with a gaping hole and like ice shards coming off of it. So it is a very satisfying death for this heavy. I guess the point is they're trying to arrest McComb in the past. So they can
they have to catch him in the act. I don't know what's.
And so what would the death penalty be? Is to bring him back and then freeze him so he could then kick him as well and break him apart into a million
And then
pieces?
you could go freeze.
So they do have him. By all rights, they have him because they've witnessed this murder take place. But Fielding double crosses Jean-Claude.
Yeah, this made me mad.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Because she is on the take. She's on the senator's payroll. And this is where the old senator gives the young senator the instruction. Now you have to run this cold chip company. Don't touch me. We can't occupy the same matter at the same time.
Yeah, thank you for setting that up, by the way.
Aren't you doing that just by being...
Yeah, it's correct.
You have to touch each other to do that? Yeah. So when Walker comes back, McComb, I guess this cold company like started the time travel thing because now McComb owns the T.E.C. And this also gets confusing because nobody knows why Walker was back.
Right, or who he even was.
Right. Well, they know
like
that
his boss, yeah.
They know he's Walker, but he's no longer best friends with his boss. So you said, right. I'm your friend. I'm just your boss in this reality.
Minute.
Yeah.
What could have possibly happened?
But even though he's not his best friend, he's like, he still trusts him for some reason. Like, I'm here because we're investigating McComb, and McComb's like all shady, and that's why. He's like, you mean the president?
Boss? Yeah.
McComb? Yeah, boss McComb. It's like, yeah, he's going back in time and get money. Well, how can he do that if we have the only car here? And that was my question. Like, how is McComb going back without anybody knowing it? Oh, the prototype in Maryland. We never dismantled it.
Or mentioned it.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a witness for this? Well, yes. Fielding. I don't think she's dead.
Let's go back and check.
McComb shot her.
You have a time machine. Just
dead.
Go back 5 minutes before she betrayed you.
So they go back in time. They find Fielding in the hospital in the ICU, but she's still alive.
Not for long.
Nope. So this is where he finds his wife's blood test in the hospital in 1994. So he finds out she's pregnant. So he can't let that lie now anymore either.
No, yeah. Meanwhile, she's been dead all this time. And it's funny because when I watch this movie, it seemed pretty straightforward. But now that you're explaining it, it's very convoluted.
It is. Yep.
But at some point, we end up with 2 Jean-Claude Van Dammes. I wanted to see a Bill and Ted type where he just goes back in time and collects versions of himself and just has like an army of Jean-Claude Van Dammes. Yeah. And everyone's doing splits.
Everyone's doing splits. That would be fantastic.
Be like operatic ballet.
So the climax of the movie is a rehash of the first scene of the movie where the future guys come to take out Walker. But it turns out they're there to take out Walker from the future, who's there, as well as the Walker from
So that means
past.
he was there at the beginning.
That's
of the movie
my question.
Well. So again,
was this an alternate timeline that we saw in the beginning of the movie?
So this is like Marty, in Back to the Future 2, sneaking around underneath the car so that you can't see him, but there he is. He's just off camera.
But I don't think he was there because the wife dies as a result of what happens at the beginning. Right. But she doesn't at the end because he's there. So that means he wasn't there in the beginning.
So then why'd they come?
I don't know.
Right. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they be there then?
But it's a huge scene where Walker Future and Walker Past kind of work together because at first he goes to the house and he sees Mia Sara, who's already seen him earlier at the mall.
And didn't recognize him because he
didn't recognize him, but he's like trying to give her a breakdown of what's happening. The older version of himself come down the stairs. Don't tell him I'm here. Keep him upstairs. Whatever you do.
Okay.
And then he starts fighting the other guys, and then they're fighting in and around the house. And then the older version of Walker gets into it. So they're both fighting the bad guys. And it's a pretty cool ending, I do have to admit.
Listen, I'll tell you right now, you're right. It's pouring rain outside, and they're climbing around on the roof of this house. And the pitch on this roof is pretty steep. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I go up on my house twice a year to clean my gutters. There's no way in hell you're getting me up there. I'm sorry, honey. You're going to die a second time.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
So this is where this is why the Jean-Claude fans had come to this movie. This is where you get like the best fight scenes in the movie. Because he breaks the neck of the one, like the head goon, like the one that you hate the most. And then it ends with the old senator and the future senator in the same room together. And he shoves one into the other. And you see what happens if the matter occupies.
This is the worst special effects.
It is bad. It's like early prototype CG.
It's funny. Somebody called out the plane Air Force One crash at the end of that movie being horrific, and I'm like, this is right up there with that as being just bad CG.
So it's like they mold together like the Blob, and then they just suck into each other's existence, and then they're gone. You see all their tissue and muscle and sinew like disintegrate and in this really bad CGI display, and then it sucks into itself and it's gone. So in effect, what they were trying to do with Max by destroying his 2004 self, by killing his 94 self, he does the same thing to the senator. So he destroys the future senator by killing the past senator, but it happens to be at the same time because they both occupy the same space. So when Max goes back, he leaves a happy ending for his 1994 self. He goes back to 2004 and it's all set right because Mia Sara is there, in a 2004 version of herself. And so is his family. So he's got his life back.
Yeah.
But he also missed 10 years. It's like he went to prison.
But not only that, where's the Max from that timeline that grew up and enjoyed his kids and wife?
I know you think he'd be at home, right?
Was he just missing the whole time and he magically shows up 10 years later? No, this is like Marty coming back and the whole timeline has been rechanged. Where's that Marty? Where's this Max that enjoyed his wife never getting blown up and his kids, and he went to their baseball games and they went on picnics? Are you going to take him out so you can take his life? Where is he?
But it was smart. It did make sense how they explained Macomb away, where they say he left his office 10 years ago and he was never heard from again. So he doesn't he doesn't cease to exist because he did exist up to that point in this timeline.
Right.
He just disappeared from that point on. That I accepted.
Yeah, that's a nice little thing. He just got him and walked out one day. We never saw him again.
But it's funny is that he also passes Fielding when he comes back in this altered reality. Yeah. She doesn't know him. Do I know you? Like, yeah, I work with you. You should know me because I see you every day, and you know we're workmates. So there are lingering questions here, just like in any other time travel movie. But it's satisfying. You know, it's one of these turn your brain off.
A happy.
Don't
yeah,
think
correct.
too much about it.
It's a happy ending. Yeah, the guy got his wife back. He got his family back. You vanquished a bad guy. Boom. End of story. Timecop. Until they make Timecop 2.
They did already, but without Jean-Claude. They actually made, just like, you know, you dropped this on me with Back to the Future. There was a TV show, it wasn't animated, but it was a live action TV show. It lasted one season on ABC in 1997. The only character that returned was the boss, Matuzak, in the T.E.C., but it wasn't even played by the same actor. It was played by another actor. Yep. And then there was a direct-to-DVD sequel with also Jean-Claude Van Damme with Jason Scott Lee as the Timecop. Yeah. And Hyams knew that they had a hit on their hands because he said it previewed through the roof. Every preview screening that they had, through the roof. I have not mentioned this yet, but one of the better CGI scenes is when he goes back to the past and he's on a highway and a truck almost hits him and he
dodges
he hits the ground and the truck goes over him, and that looks pretty good. That doesn't really look like it's a composite shot or anything like that. I have to admit that they did a good job with that one.
How do you know they didn't just throw him out in the highway?
Maybe they did.
Duck.
Roger Ebert again, not a fan of the time travel.
Ebert. And we're gonna stop talking about Roger Ebert. We're giving him way too much screen time here.
We are. He called this a low rent Terminator. Well, I'd give him that. I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that. There's even that sequence in the mall where he's in the back walls, and I'm like, this is the quintessential Terminator.
Yeah.
T2.
The Washington Post. For once, Van Damme's accent is easier to understand than the plot.
Well, you got that going for you.
The funny thing is that one of the nerd back at the TEC who kind of controls everything, because you always have to have that character.
Oh, sure.
Right?
You need a tech guy. Yeah.
Yeah. The actor's name is Scott Bellis. And I was thinking to myself, where do I know this guy? And I couldn't think of it until I looked it up. He is the character of Max Fennig from the X-Files, who shows up in multiple X-Files episodes as a UFO abductee. And that's where I knew him from.
Oh, wow.
And when you first see this character, he's got like a VR headset on. And what you see is he's looking at a naked girl. I'm like, how can you be doing this at work? That's like me looking at a Playboy on my desk at work. How can you not be fired by doing this?
Do you know the story behind that?
I did. I was just about to share it.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The film crew, it was written that he was watching some kind of a nature documentary.
Which is like even weirder than watching porn.
Yes, which is bizarre. And it was supposed to be a documentary on beavers, which is even more bizarre. So the film crew went out to a strip club the night before that was supposed to go and film the footage for this fake nature documentary, got hungover, and missed whatever they needed to get on to get out to the location. So they ended up, I don't know if they were with the stripper or they were still in the club, but whatever stripper that was in the strip club that they went to, they propositioned her to film this scene. So that's what the nature documentary became.
Did they pay her the same rate that they were going to pay the beaver?
I hope so. I really do. But it does make more sense that this is what he's watching. No, it does interrupted.
To watch a nature documentary, it'd be like, what are you doing, dude? You're a nerd. I want to see that movie, by the way. That sounds like a better movie.
So again, like I said, first time I saw this, I was a fan already of Jean-Claude's. As long as there was fighting in it, I was there, because that's really the reason I was seeing this movie in the theater.
Well, that's where his claim to fame is. That's what you want to see in a Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So although I would have to say that this is more, it's not like a blood sport. It's not even like a hard target. This is going more in that sci-fi area. And I think this is why it's so regarded, not just by Jean-Claude Van Damme fans. This has gone into the, the sci-fi cult.
It's definitely a more family friendly as well. It's not, blood sport is just straight up.
So because of that, it's not, I don't hold it as high in my Jean-Claude canon as some people might. I still think Hard Target is the pinnacle of his achievement. And I like his earlier stuff like Bloodsport and Lionheart and all that stuff. So, but still, it's a passable, entertaining movie. And because of my fond memories of it, of skipping out on work and going to go see it, I'm going to give it 3.5 points out of 5.
I'm going to go right below you. I'm going to go 3.25.
3.25?
I enjoyed watching this again. This was fun.
Yeah, it's a fun time travel movie.
Yeah, and it's not that long.
No, it's an hour and a little over hour and a half. So in and out, just like you need with a movie like this.
Yes, correct. Don't spend too much time.
What else did we do this week?
Well, yeah, I'm embarrassed to even bring this up because I texted you during the week. So this movie is on Prime and it's called The Vast of Night. And I was flipping through last week and I'm watching, the little, if you leave the icon on long enough, they just run the trailer. They run a little teaser for it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this looks really familiar. Like, did I watch this before? But I was intrigued enough that I actually watched it. And as I'm watching it, I keep thinking to myself, I may have seen this before. But I have to say, and I think you pointed out that you had mentioned this on the show, or maybe not on the show, like a year ago.
Yeah, I brought it up in some kind of a conversation. I know I did.
Because it's basically set in the 50s, and the kid's a radio station, and he's friends with this teenage girl played by Sierra McCormick. She runs the phone dispatch. She's the telephone operator back in the day. That the switchboards and plugging the wires and stuff in there. But it's by a first-time director, Andrew Patterson, and it's all about this quote-unquote UFO encounter. I was absolutely entranced by this. I thought that this was fantastic for a first-time director. There's a lot of really neat things going on, and there's long cuts of these characters spouting a lot of dialogue. And I just thought it was kind of neat. I thought it was definitely something different.
Yeah, and there's one I remember distinctly. There's one long uninterrupted cut of like one of the characters running from like the high school gym to like you see the camera follows them going out of the high school and up the street and
because the whole town is like at the basketball game at the high school, and this girl and the DJ, who I didn't even write down the character's name or the actor. It's really like two people. There's a lot of interaction. The one scene that comes to mind is the girl running the switchboard, and she's talking with the guy who's running the radio station, and he's on air. She's getting phone calls left and right, and she's constantly plugging in and unplugging. And here, this guy's got this noise. Tell me what this noise is. And she's plugging this stuff, and it's just one uninterrupted scene that has to be like 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's insane. And the dialogue, and she's talking to people on the phone, hanging up and going to somebody else. And very well done. It's shot and it feels like a Outer Limit / Twilight Zone episode.
Yes. And I think a lot of people compare it to that as well. And
I think it was set up that it's purposely set to kind of have that look and feel.
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about the ending, but
very ambiguous ending.
Yeah, it is. It's right up there with the, save yourselves kind of a thing. But again, I thought for a first time director and these unknown actors, I thought it was very well done. And it just ratcheted up a lot of tension with very little budget. And
if you're an audiophile, I think you'd find some interest in this as well, because it's all about them trying to decipher what this noise is. So this girl hears it and brings I think if I'm remembering it correctly, brings the recording of it to the DJ, or gets him to hear it as well.
The running thing is, she's talking to this guy who's the DJ, and he does fast, rapid fire dialogue when the two of them are out walking, and she has this recorder that she bought for herself. She bought it out of Sears catalog or whatever, but she's never actually used it. So he's teaching her how to record, and they're just having these conversations. But that comes into play later when they go and they interview this old woman who may or may not have had an encounter with this noise before.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right. Audiophile. There's a lot of audio stuff that goes on. Where they're trying to decipher stuff. So yeah, it's cool. I thought it was neat, and it's on Prime. It's on Prime.
So I didn't talk about this last week because I wanted to.
I know. I was very disappointed that I had to wait a week to hear this.
But I went to go see Jaws in IMAX. So I did the same with E.T. a couple of weeks previous. because for some reason Spielberg was putting out these 2 movies within a month of each other into IMAX theaters, and I think in regular theaters as well. But I was really disappointed because Danbury, Connecticut is the closest IMAX theater to me. So I went to go see E.T. there, and I did the same with Jaws. But when I got to the theater and I looked at the poster, it said in, Jaws reimagined in the IMAX and 3D experience. I'm like, wait a second. This isn't 3D, this IMAX movie that I'm seeing. So apparently in some theaters, you not only got it in IMAX, but you got it in 3D as well.
That might have been too much for me.
But yeah, I didn't, unfortunately. But still. And this would happen to be on that National Movie Theater Day when every ticket was only $3.
Oh no! Did you see that there was like 100-person brawl at a theater? They were all going to see The Invitation.
Thankfully, that wasn't my theater.
$3 brings out the riffraff.
But it did prevent us from getting any concessions because the line at the concession stand was like all the way down.
Sure, now I got extra money.
Thankfully, they were not all there to see Jaws because my theater was like maybe only 25% full. You'd expect no less in IMAX. The picture was crystal clear.
I was going to ask, it's got to be remastered, right?
Yeah, obviously cleaned up. And we sat relatively close to the screen because that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do with IMAX, I think.
Do you see like really the meat stuff stuck between his teeth?
Oh, yeah.
That Kittner boy stuck between his teeth?
All that loving detail. With the 2D experience, it felt like you were in the water with Bruce because you couldn't get away from the screen.
No. Did Ben Gardner's head still make you jump?
It did. Because I think I'd have to go back and watch my Blu-ray, but I'm pretty sure that sound effect was beefed up in that scene.
Really? Yeah.
It was even louder than I remember.
Well, think about, I saw this in a drive-in as a little kid and it traumatized me, but to see it in the theater in full like 5 surround.
Yeah.
Has got to be. I mean,
but I had that in mind. So we brought our son with us, 12 years old, to see this. He had never seen this before, and nor did he know what was in store. I don't think he would have wanted to go if he had known that there was
go see a giant man-eating shark.
Yeah,
son.
So, but I did. I was protective during the Ben Gardner scene, so I put my hand over his eyes, and he still jumped. Oh no! He still jumped because of the sound effect. Yeah.
You got to let him experience it. Now he's like, my dad covered my eyes.
Yeah. But that's the only part I did. So he saw everything else, and it's.
I would have just held his hand. I think I would have just held his hand. Just prepare yourself. Yeah. Were people jumping? Were they in the theater? Were they gasping?
Yeah. No, but I think pretty much. And there were younger kids than him in the theater because he's 12.
Really.
A lot of the dads were bringing their family, and
you gotta come see this.
And at least, and I was the same. About 5 of the dads had a Jaws t-shirt on. So they were super fans already. And one of the kids, I think, was only 3 or 4.
Oh, come on.
A really young kid.
Wow. Yeah, I was 8. Yeah. Even the IMAX was only $3.
Yep. Even the IMAX.
Wow.
Only $3.
These theaters are doing what they got to do. I don't know.
It was a deal.
Cinemark keeps posting stuff on social media that they're restructuring, and people are already lamenting that Regal may be shutting down, and I don't know what's going on, but you better stay open. So if it takes $3 movies to get people in the theater, I laugh when people are like, "Oh, you won't catch me in the theater." No, but we're going to go to the grocery store and stand shoulder to shoulder and sneeze in the friggin' pasta aisle.
Yeah, I know. You're actually, if it's a movie like this, where it's not a full theater, you're actually farther away than you would be from anybody in the grocery store.
Absolutely.
Again, because my son was there, it was like watching it for the first time through his eyes, because I was looking forward to see what his reactions would be. Maybe a little bit too much for Ben Gardner.
No, but that's great. I hate to say it, but bring it back to Back to the Future 3 the whole time going, this is the first time Jim's watching this. So to have your son there going, he has never experienced this. He does not know what's coming.
No. And so like to look at him, give him the side eye whenever, when the Alex Kittner part comes on and the kid gets, eaten on the raft. Yeah. And then especially when the Indianapolis scene comes on and they're comparing their scars. And he thought that was funny. He was laughing at that.
Well, that's you're setting up the audience to be off guard when he gets eaten.
And he tells the story. Yeah, and then when he gets eaten,
Is that true?
at the end.
True.
But after it was over, he was like, very sarcastically, well, that was a wholesome family fun movie that you just took me to.
Did you expect anything less, son?
When this first came out, this prevented millions of people from ever going in the ocean again. And he said, I'm going to be one of them. I'm sticking to pools from this point on.
Well, it also caused many of people to just blindly kill sharks for years and years. That was the other end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I've said it before, this movie traumatized me as a kid. And growing up, my grandparents had a house on the lake and we spent every summer there. So, active imagination, doesn't matter that it's fresh water. I do not like to this day the ocean. So, but it was only my daughter's love of sharks that kind of got me over it. Well, that's cool. That's awesome.
It was a great experience. It really was.
Nice. And I'm curious, the 3D must just be over the top. Because if Spielberg's involved in it, because I mean, look at all those, we went through that 3D phase a couple years ago, and the post-production work on some of this stuff is just horrible, absolutely abysmal. You're looking to get an extra $5 because you converted it to 3D, but in this, I can easily see.
Somebody on Twitter posted, who did see it in 3D, posted screen grabs of the 4 scenes that popped the most. And of course, one of them is that really nice tracking shot of Scheider on the beach when after Alex Kitten gets killed. Yeah, which is so simple in execution, but it's so effective on screen. Yeah, and I can see that like being immersive, like if you had the 3D glasses on. Yeah. And of course, the one where the shark lunges into camera right before it jumps on the back of the orca. Yeah, that might be too intense. I don't know if how I would I would handle that in 3D. Yeah, no, like I think we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, these people who go and sit in inner tubes in a pool and watch this. Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you. Yeah, I will gladly pass. But it was an experience, I'll have to say. Very cool. I'm just wondering, Mr. Spielberg, when are you going to put out 1941 in IMAX now? He's all over it. 3D just for Jim. Yeah, make it happen. We don't get Schindler's List in 3D. Raiders, you got to put out Raiders in IMAX. Come on. Oh, and we just talked Indy 5. So would you do that? Oh, that would be something. Yeah, I'm sure that would bring you out to Danbury if that was happening. Next week might bring me out to Danbury, actually. Oh, yeah. We'll keep that close to the vest, but that's a future episode. Oh, that's not next week? That's not next week. That's right. We already. So this is a good opportunity. What are we doing? I don't know because apparently next week. Are we? I'll tell you. Disney Plus. We're talking. Well, we just recently had Disney Plus Day. Some might say we recently suffered through Disney Plus Day, seeing that Thor: Love and Thunder dropped on Disney Plus, and the live action. It's getting a lot of hate. The live action Pinocchio also dropped on Disney. Can we really call these? Can we stop calling these things live action? Well, they're partially live action. Okay, one actor. Partially. More than one. Two actors. Quite a few, actually. So that's what we're going to be covering next week is the new version of Pinocchio, starring Tom Hanks. And it's only an hour and a half. No, hour and 57 minutes. Oh, is it hour 57? Oh, I'm sorry. The original, because I went back and I'm going to watch the animated because I want to at least compare. Yeah. The two. And that's only an hour and a half. It's hour 31. Is it even that long? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Although there's like 6 minutes of credit on the front end. Gotcha. Gotcha. But yeah. And then we are speaking of Spielberg. We're going to pair it up with AI, artificial intelligence. And the backstory to this is just fascinating. How Spielberg picked up the pieces from a project that Stanley Kubrick was working on. I thought, we'll get into this. I really thought that Kubrick had started directing this and then he died and then Spielberg came in and finished it. That's not the case. No. He is the sole director. He is. But this was Kubrick's baby, for lack of a better term, for almost 20 years. Yeah. So puppet or animatronic or whatever you want to call it wants to be a real boy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be, kids.
No.
Don't be careful what you wish for.
So that's what we're doing next week is Pinocchio
That is next week.
And AI. So come on back.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your favorite podcasts on. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and then share it with your fellow movie nerd friends. It means the world to us and helps our listenership grow.
You can also find us on all of the socials, Instagram and Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. We're on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just look for the Popcorn Bucket.
You can help support this show by visiting our TeePublic page for some TMI branded goodies such as hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. tpublic.com/TMI Confessionals, all one word.
A 5-star review would be incredibly nice as well. I'm just saying.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate you. Be sure to come back next week. We'll save some popcorn for you.
Hey, McFly! What kind of name is that?